Chapter 3 of Marx's Capital, Volume 1 is about money and commodity circulation. Section 1 is about the measure of value. Now, for the sake of simplicity, Marx assumes that gold is the money commodity here, and that you're exchanging gold for whatever it is you want to buy. The role of gold is to express the exchange values of commodities in a way that can be universally compared in a common denomination. You can say a desk is worth 2 pounds of gold and a car is worth 50 pounds of gold, and so on. And because it serves this role, it becomes the money commodity. Now, since all commodities are objectified human labor, meaning human labor went into producing them, money therefore becomes a sort of proxy for the human labor value of a commodity. The price of objects is not an objective thing. The seller of iron or of corn must therefore indicate the price of the commodity somehow, like a price tag or something. Marx makes a footnote in this section that money is not equivalent to labor in a way that justifies the concept of labor money that was used by Robert Owen in his utopian experiment in New Harmony, Indiana. There, Owen tried to use notes that denominated labor hours as a concept completely divorced from commodity production. For example, you might have a bill saying, this person worked for X hours, and you could use that regardless of whether or not those X hours were hard work or work that was just really poorly done and lazy and slow work. It wasn't moderated by the socially necessary labor time that determines the value of commodities. Now, you could try having two different metals serve as money rather than just gold. For example, you can use silver and copper alongside gold to represent the price of commodities, and you would have the values of gold, silver, and copper able to be expressed in relation to each other as well. Maybe 1 ounce of gold is worth 10 ounces of silver, which is worth 100 ounces of copper. So you might have a commodity with two price values, one in gold, one in silver, with a specific ratio dependent on the relative value of gold to silver. But the socially necessary labor time to produce ounces of gold and silver can fluctuate, causing some problems with this. Attempts to fix the ratio of the value of gold and silver as a constant have historically not worked that well. Various governments would try to export whichever metal was undervalued and other ad hoc solutions, but in practice, one metal has ended up being the primary form of money. And Adam Smith describes this process in Wealth of Nations, Book 1, Chapter 4, so none of this should sound too unfamiliar to classical liberals. A rise or fall in the value of gold doesn't affect the ratio between subdivisions of gold. For example, if the price of gold is doubled, 10 ounces of gold are still worth 10 times as much as 1 ounce of gold, just as 10 dimes equals a dollar, no matter the value of the dollar. But a change in the price of gold does affect the exchange values of commodities expressed in gold. If the price of gold doubles, the prices of commodities can be cut in half. Note that this is strictly true when the value of commodities remains constant. If a price of a commodity increased proportionately with the value of gold, the price of the commodity expressed in gold would, of course, remain the same. We discussed earlier about how gold is a great commodity to use for money because its value scales with how much of the substance you have. So naturally, you would want to use weight as a really useful measure of the amount of substance. So you have the first standard units of gold being expressed in terms relating to weight. That's where the British pound comes from. It used to be a pound of silver back in the late 8th century. The French livre was established by Charlemagne as, 1 pound weight of silver. You could further divide these into smaller weights. For the British, you had shillings and pence. for the British pound. For the French livre, you had sous and denier, and forgive my pronunciations, I do not speak French. Gold eventually replaced silver, and so a pound or a livre was defined to a certain amount of gold. Marx notes that centuries of debasement have left nothing behind of the original weights of gold coins but their names, unquote. British pounds still exist as coins. They don't weigh a pound and they aren't gold anymore. Price and value are not the same thing. The price of a commodity is what you might be able to sell it for, given whatever social conditions you have. So you might not be able to sell something for as high as its value might imply you could in ideal circumstances, or you might be able to sell something above its intrinsic value. Pearls have little function outside of jewelry, but they can sell for quite a lot. Land has no value in terms of objectified human labor, but it does have a price. Marx points out that in order to exchange one commodity with another through the use of the intermediate money commodity, you have to actually sell the commodity, transforming the commodity into money, so to speak, and then buy the other commodity that you wanted to exchange it for. That's how one person goes from commodity A to commodity B. They sell commodity A for money, and they buy commodity B with that money. This sets us up for the next section of Chapter 3, where we're going to look at the circuit of commodity to money to commodity.